right, day 9. I'm going to get into some dictionaries and nesting. Here we go.
Hey, welcome back. It's day 9 of 100 Days of Code. And today we're going to be learning more about Python dictionaries and nesting. And by the end of today, you will have built a silent auction program. We all know that there are auctions where everybody bids and you can see everybody else's bid, and the auctioneer gets you to bid higher and higher values. Now, there's also a type of auction called a silent auction, where everybody bids silently and no one knows the other person's bid until at the very end of the auction, where the highest bid is revealed. That's what we're going to be building. And if you want to check out the final program, you can head over to this URL right here. And here you'll not only see this amazing gavel built out of ASCII, but also the secret auction program. So here's how it works. Let's say that I'm going to be the first person logging onto the program. I'm going to give my name and my bid. Let's say I'm going to bid $53 for this item. And once I'm done with my bid, it asks me whether if there are any other bidders. So if I type yes, then the screen clears and I can hand over the laptop to the next person who's going to make their bid. So let's say there's James who's going to bid even less than I did, and then he's going to make way for the final bidder who is going to bid $121. So now at this stage, if everybody is done, then we type no, and it's going to now tally up all the bids and figure out who bid the highest and give us a winner, printing out the winner is Ginny with a bid of $121. There's a number of places that you could use this if you were auctioning some piece of art, or if you're trying to outbid your brothers and sisters on who gets to go on the trampoline, or if you're trying to start an auction with your friends or co-workers. The silent auction has many, many uses. All right, in today's lessons, we're going to be focusing mostly on the Python dictionary. But in addition, we're also going to look at how we can nest, say, lists inside lists or dictionaries inside dictionaries, and also mixing lists and dictionaries as well. Once you're ready, head over to the next lesson and let's get started with the day. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is dictionaries in Python. Now, dictionaries in Python work kind of similarly to dictionaries in real life, right? So if you were to look up a word in the dictionary, say the word code, then you might find the definition as something along the lines of program instructions for the computer. And dictionaries are really useful because they allow us to group together and tag related pieces of information. The way I like to think about dictionaries is in the form of a table. Every dictionary has two parts to it. On the left hand side is the key, and that is the equivalent of the word in the dictionary. And then it's also got an associated value. That would be the equivalent of the actual definition of the word. Now, let's say that we took this very simple table of definitions of programming words that we've come across so far, and we go ahead and we try to convert it into a dictionary. How would we do that? Let me firstly drop the last two rows, and let's just start with the first one. The first thing we want to do is we want to create a dictionary. And to do that in Python, this is what the syntax looks like. We have a set of curly braces, and everything that's inside the curly brace is the content of our dictionary. The key goes first, followed by a colon, and then followed by the value. In our table, we've got this word bug, which is the first key, so we can replace that over here in our dictionary. And the value that's associated with this key is the definition for a bug. So an error in a program that prevents the program from running as expected. That becomes the value and can be replaced here after the colon. So now we've created an actual dictionary using Python code. What if you wanted to have more than one entry in your dictionary? Well, you would separate each of the key value pairs using a comma. And
Okay.
then you can continue adding key and value pairs until you get to the end of your dictionary. All right, let's take a look at dictionaries in action. If you head over to the day 9 start code file, then you can see that in here I've already added the dictionary that we were defining earlier on, and I've stored it inside a variable called programming dictionary. Now currently I've only got two entries in this dictionary, the definition for bug and the definition for function. Now the first thing I want to highlight is when you create a dictionary that has more than one element, such as in this case, then you want to take care to format it properly so that it's more easily readable. So what you'll see Python programmers do by convention is they will start off the dictionary with the open curly brace at the top, and then
Mm.
every subsequent entry is indented by one indent. And then at the very end of that entry, there's a comma, and then we hit enter so that the next item goes on to the next line. And finally, the last curly brace should go at the very beginning, in line with the start of the dictionary. And another thing that's quite nice to do is to cap off all entries in your dictionary or list with a comma. This means that if you needed to add more items into the dictionary, you can simply just hit enter and continue typing the next thing. And if we wanted to add another entry, it's as simple as adding in the key, a colon, and then the value. And to cap it off, again with a comma. So now our dictionary represents exactly the same data as we saw in our table over here, with a bunch of key value pairs and a total of 3 entries. Now, the next thing I want to do is, what if I wanted to retrieve an item from the dictionary? Because we know that if we had a list, what we would do is we would use a set of square brackets, and then we would give the index of the item that we wanted. So the item at index 0 or 1 or 2, and so on and so forth. Now, for dictionaries, it's kind of similar in terms of syntax, but the only difference is that dictionaries have elements which are identified by their key. If we wanted this piece of information, for example, then all we have to do is tap into the dictionary and then add a set of square brackets. And inside the square brackets, we're going to
Okay.
provide the key. So here, the key is
So
a
even though you
string, and
declare
it's
it
the
with the curly
string bug.
braces, you still
So let's go ahead and put bug in here.
use the square
And
brackets.
now if I go ahead and print this, then you can see that is going to give me the value, which is an error in a program that prevents the program from running as
Okay.
expected. Now, it's really, really important that you make sure that when you're fetching something out of a dictionary by its key, that you actually spell the key correctly. A really, really common error is when you're trying to retrieve something out of a dictionary and you've just made a very simple typo. So instead of U, I'm typing O here, and you'll see we get an error. And the error tells us that it's a key error referring to this particular key, and it highlights this line 7, where we're trying to retrieve something out of this dictionary by this key. Basically, it's telling you that this key doesn't actually exist and it can't be found, so it doesn't know what it is that you want. Remember how when we had lists and when we tried to retrieve something that was not inside the list, so for example, this particular list at index 4 doesn't actually exist because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is actually not a piece of data inside this list. Similarly, with dictionaries, if we try to put in a key that doesn't exist, then we get this key error. Now, another common pitfall that students fall down into is they don't actually use the correct data type. So, for example, if when we defined this dictionary without putting a string around each of these keys, then it's going to error out and it won't even let us run. It's going to tell us undefined name bug because it thinks that this is a variable that you've declared somewhere,
Mm.
but it's not. In fact, what you wanted are these strings for keys. And so when you have a key that is a string, when you're trying to retrieve the data from that key, you also have to make sure that you provide the key in its actual data type. So, for example, if this was just a number, say 123, then of course all you have to write in here is just 123, and it would know that this piece of data is what you wanted. So that's how you retrieve items from a dictionary, by adding a square bracket and then giving it the key. And it will look for the key inside the dictionary and give you back the value. Now, what if you wanted to add a piece of data, such as that loop that we had earlier on, but you want to do it programmatically? So instead of doing it when you were defining the dictionary at the beginning, what if at some later stage in your program you needed to add a new entry? Well, to do this, it's also really simple. All you have to do is to tap into the dictionary, which is called Programming Dictionary in our case. And again, using square brackets, we define the key. The key I'm going to add is our loop. And then after a equal sign, I get to assign the value. So in my case, the value is going to be the definition for a loop. And now when this line of code is executed and we go ahead and just print the programming dictionary after this has happened, then we'll see that it's actually different from what we had before. So let's hit run, and you can see that previously we had a programming dictionary that had only two items, bug and function. And after this line where we print our programming dictionary again, you can see it's now got three items, bug, function, and loop. Now, very often when you're writing code, it can be really helpful to start out with an empty dictionary. Just as you saw previously, you could create an empty list by simply having a set of square brackets with nothing inside. You can also create an empty dictionary by simply creating a set of curly braces with nothing inside. And then at a later stage, you can add to your dictionary by using this method that you saw here. Now, on the other hand, you might actually want to wipe an entire dictionary. Here, I'm creating a new empty dictionary by creating this pair of curly braces with nothing inside. But I can also wipe an existing dictionary by simply doing the same thing. We know that this dictionary, programming dictionary, has three items in it, but on line 17, I'm going to say programming dictionary equals empty dictionary. And now if I move this print statement down here, then you can see that when it prints out, it's actually going to be completely empty. That can be really useful if you wanted to clear out a user's progress, or for example, if a game restarts, then all the scores and stats will probably have to be wiped empty. So this is one way that you could do that. Now, this method of tapping into a dictionary using the key to fetch the relevant item from it and then doing something with it goes beyond just adding. You can also use this to edit an item in a dictionary. For example, let me go ahead and comment out these two lines of code so we don't wipe our programming dictionary. And instead, I'm going to tap into the programming dictionary and I'm going to fetch the item that has a key of bug. And I'm going to redefine its value. So currently it should be an error in a program that prevents the program from running as expected. And I can prove that if I just wrap this around a print statement. If instead I wanted this to be a different value, then I can simply use the same syntax as I did for adding new items, but in this case I'm actually editing this entry because it's going to look through the dictionary, find a value with this key, and then assign it to whatever I put on the right hand side of the equal sign. Now on the other hand, if it finds nothing with that key, then it's going to create a new entry with the value again on the right hand side of the equal sign. Now let's say that a bug is instead a moth in your computer. Now if I go ahead and print my programming dictionary once more, then you can see that the definition for our bug has now just been changed. The final thing with regards to dictionaries that I think is really, really useful is how you loop through a dictionary. And using your knowledge from lists, You might think that to loop through a dictionary, you would, let's say we're using a for loop, and we say for thing in programming dictionary, let's go ahead
Okay,
and
I was wondering
print
about this.
this thing each time. Here's a good moment to play computer and think, what do you expect to be printed? So let's comment out all the other print statements so we don't get confused. And when I click run, what do you think will be printed?
Alright, so I would assume it's going to go for each. Hmm. Yeah, because I don't know if it'll just be the key or the key value pair. I think it'll be just the. I think it'll be the whole key value pair. Maybe.
All right, is that what you expected?
Yeah,
Because it
just the
certainly
key.
wasn't
Okay.
what I expected when I first learned Python. I thought it would give me each of the items in the dictionary with its key and its value. But instead, this code actually just gives you the keys. Now, of course, once you do have access to the key, instead of thing, I should actually really say for key in programming dictionary. If I wanted to print the key, then of course I could just write print key.
That does make
But
more
if I wanted
sense.
to get hold of the value, I could equally just as easily tap into my dictionary, use the square brackets, and
Yeah.
pass in that key. So now when I hit run, you can see it's giving me first the key from this line, and then secondly, the value based on this line. I'm using that retrieval code in order to get the value. Of course, remember that you can get access to all the code that I'm writing here. And if you want to, have a quick review of everything that we've gone through so far, because a lot of this knowledge is going to be tested in the next lesson, where we do a coding exercise that will really solidify everything you've learned in this lesson so far. So for all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson.
Right. No. Okay. Cool. You have access to a database of student scores in the format of a dictionary. Alright. Keys and student scores are the names of the students, and the values are their exam scores. Write a program that converts their scores to grades. Okay. By the end of your program, you should have a new dictionary. Okay. Uh, Called student grades. Well, actually, we have it by the beginning of our program. The final version of the student grades dictionary will be checked. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Do not modify lines 1 through 7. Alright. Okay. So we will do a for loop for each key in student scores. Um, Trying to, so we need to take the key and get the value. So for key and student scores, then we need to check the scoring criteria. Let's do this real quick by itself. If score is string for that. Score is equal or greater than or equal to 91. Grade is equal to outstanding. If score is greater than or equal to 81. Because if it's not between, or, you know what, let's catch this upper boundary and score less than or equal to 100. Alright, so that'll catch anything from 100 to 91. If it's not that, then we'll move on to 81 or above. So 81 to 90. Grade is equal to x exceeds expectations. Score is greater than or equal to 71. So 71 to 80. Grade equals acceptable. Else, because this will catch everything else, unless, you know, somehow you get above 100, but luckily for us and for this exercise, there are no grades that are higher than 100. Grade equals fit. Okay, so we can just take that and we'll put it in this for loop. I think we can, no, don't want to comment. There we go. That shortcut was Control right square bracket. So the key that's kind of below the equals plus sign. And then we will take student grades key. Don't need the key. Equals grade. I think that's it. Let's see what we get. Actually, let's for each key in student grades, just to have it print out a little bit more cleanly. Key, right? Actually, let's do an F string. Key student grades. Y. Oh yeah. Okay. Student grades. Key. Alright, I think that should work. It doesn't look great syntactically because curly braces and square brackets, but let's give it a go. See what we get. Score is not defined. You're right, it's not defined. Let's do something about that. Key student scores key. There we go. That should. I think that's it. Try her again. Show me the line. Line 17. Oh, it would be very helpful to have that indicator in the output, but alright. Exceeds expectations. Let's make sure. Here he's at an 88. That'll be less than outstanding. Exceeds expectations. Ron, 78. That'll be acceptable. Yep. Hermione, of course, outstanding. Draco, acceptable. Neville, fails. Yeah, cool. Got that right. Just a couple
A
hiccups.
dictionary being something like a
Why are
folder
you
where
starting
lots.
so in the middle of things?
Now that we've seen lists as well as dictionaries, I want to talk about a concept that you often see in both of these collection types, and that's something called nesting. Now, if we imagine a list or a dictionary being something like a folder where lots of things can be stored inside it, then nesting lists and dictionaries is just a matter of putting one inside the other. For example, here's a dictionary that is very simple. It's only got one key value pair. Now, we know that we can add multiple key value pairs into the same dictionary by just adding a bunch of commas to separate them. Now, what if instead of having a simple value like a string or a number, I could also put a list as a value as well?
Oh boy.
Similarly, I could also use a dictionary as a value. In this case,
Why
we've
you gotta
got
do
a
this?
list as the value for key, this first one, and we've got a dictionary as the value for key 2. Notice how this is a list and a dictionary nested inside another dictionary. The structure gets a little bit more complex, but it gives
Okay.
us more flexibility when we're trying to store more complex pieces of data. Coming back to our code, let's go ahead and create some sample dictionaries to see what this actually looks like in real life. For example, this could be a dictionary that contains the country as the key and the city, that is the capital, as the value. So for France, that's Paris. For Germany, that's Berlin. This is a very simple dictionary that you've seen already. Now, if I wanted to nest a list in a dictionary, then I would be able to represent even more complex data. For example, if I had a travel log where I was going to collect a dictionary of all the cities I had been for each of the countries I've traveled to. So, for example, if I had traveled to France and I wanted to say that I've been to multiple cities, I can't simply just say Paris and then Lille, Dijon. That doesn't really work because each key can only have one value. The only way that we can make these three pieces of data one value is by turning it into a list, like so. So now in our travel log dictionary, as represented by the curly braces, we have one key value pair, and it just so happens that the value in this case is a list. And of course, you can go on and add as many entries as you would like, and still preserving this kind of structure of key being a string and the value being a list. Now, I've got a challenge for you to test your understanding of how lists nested inside dictionaries might work. I want you to guess and figure out how can you print out the Lille string from this travel log. So think about how you might access items in a dictionary, and then think about how you access items in a list. And the goal is just to print out this lil. Pause the video, give this a go.
Alright, so I think uh, well, if we want to print, wait, no, that's right, print lil. Out of here, we will want travel log France. So that'll give us the list. Alright. Um, hmm. One? Let's give that a go. We'll just try it out ourselves anyways. Print. Cool.
Okay, so let's first start with accessing this list. So if we go ahead and use our print statement to tap into the travel log, we know that we can access the value of a dictionary by using the key. So we use these square brackets and then we have to type the key, which in this case is France. So if we print this, right now we're getting hold of the list. And we know how to work with lists already. So if we want the item at index 0, 1, then we just need another set of square brackets and add 1 in there.
I mean,
So
if you
now
think
if
about
we
it,
run this, you can see we're able
just
to
looks
get
weird.
hold of
But
this item.
yeah, if you were just
Now
using a
we've
regular
previously
list,
seen that you
that's pretty
can nest
straightforward.
lists inside other lists, and you can end up with a many layered nested list. So for example, if I had a list that had the letters A and B, I can nest a list inside there at the index 2, so 0, 1, 2. The third item in this list is another list, and I'm going to add C and D. So now we have what's called
I
a
don't like
2D
it.
list. We have a list and then we have a list inside that list. So here's another challenge for you. See if you can figure out how to print out this letter D from the nested list. Think about what we did before and think about what you've learnt previously about nested lists to complete this challenge. Pause the video now.
Alright. I did see that it is over here, so take this, make it easy for ourselves. We're gonna print D. And nested list. Ooh. Well, we know it's 2. So that's just going to give us the list, and then we'll put 1. It looks offensive, but it it makes sense, I guess. It does make sense.
Okay, so let's first access this list. So if we go ahead and print our nested list and then we put in the index of this list, it would be at 0, 1, 2. So let's put 2 inside the set of square brackets. I'm just going to comment this other print statement out. And now you can see we've got hold of C and D.
Yep.
So now that we've got that list, how would we access D if we were working with this list? Well, we would tap into the item at index 1. So what we know is this part of the code results in this list. Then to get hold of D, all we need to do is add another set of square brackets and then add 1 as the index. And now when I print it, I'm able to get hold of that item D. Now, this is quite confusing at first because there's a lot of nesting and it can be a little bit difficult to wrap your head around it. But if you try it a few times with some of the other items in the nested list inside a dictionary or the nested list inside a list, then eventually it will make sense and it's not actually so complicated. Now, other things that you can nest is you can actually nest a dictionary within a dictionary itself. So if I have this travel log and I'm going to copy it and then comment it out so that I can have a different version of it. Now, if I wanted to, instead of storing a list as the value of the key France, I can also store a dictionary. So now this is a dictionary which has a key of France, and the value for that key happens to be another dictionary. So what's going to go inside this dictionary? Well, if I was really building a travel log, I might want to log, well, how many times have I visited this country? So let's create a num times visited key for this France and make sure that we've got it as a string. And then for the value, we could have a number. So let's say I've been to France 8 times. Then that would be the first key value pair in our France entry. And then we've also got another key called cities visited. And now what we can do is we can save the list into the value for that key. So now we've got a list nested inside a dictionary, which is nested inside another dictionary. And if I was to complete my travel log, then it might look something like this. And you can see that our data is more complex. We've got more key value pairs associated, and we've essentially got a much better way of organizing the data for our travel log. So now comes the question of how would you access some of the items from this more complex travel log? Can you figure out how to print out Stuttgart from this travel log? Figure out how you might access this dictionary, and then how you might access this list, and then how you might access this item in the list so that you can print it out. Pause the video now.
Alright, we've done all of the other ones, so there's no reason we can't do this. Go ahead and comment these out. Okay. And Stuttgart, or however you pronounce that. Alright, print. So we're going to need at least travel log and access Germany. Okay, so that is going to give us that dictionary. Then we'll go cities visited, which should then give us the list: Berlin, Hamburg, Stuttgart, and Stuttgart is index 2. think it'll work. Yeah, okay. It looks overwhelming, but just gotta break it down bit by bit.
All right, so let's go step by step. The first step going inside this dictionary is we have a key and we have a value. So let's try and pick out this value. We can do that by printing out the travel log and then using square brackets to tap into Germany. Now, when we print this line, we should be able to get this dictionary that contains all of this data. So to narrow it down to this list, we have to again use the next key. So add a set of square brackets and then use cities visited, and making sure that you've actually typed it right without any typos. Often it's easier to just copy and paste. And now I should be able to get the list that's stored under that key. So finally, to access this item in the list, it's at index 012. So another set of square brackets, put the index 2 in there, and we've got Stuttgart being printed out here. So there you have it. You have lists inside dictionaries, dictionaries inside dictionaries, lists inside lists, and a whole lot of different ways of organizing your data and working with dictionaries in Python. Next, we've got a quiz for you to test some of your knowledge on these dictionaries, and hopefully you will pass with flying colors.
Okay. Which line of code will change the starting dictionary to the final dictionary? Alright, so A and B are the same thing. We're just adding C. Okay, so we're looking for we'll change the starting dictionary to the final dictionary. Okay, I don't think you need a pen. That's not how you add to a dictionary, from what I understand. Uh, that's not it either. This is how you add to a dictionary. But why? I don't understand. The whole point of final dictionary equals starting dictionary. Like, I feel like these would do the same thing, but it's either one of these two. I'm pretty confident I can rule out these three. I want to go with this one. I can't really say why, but well, now I kind of wish I got the other, or picked the other one just to see the reason why it was wrong, but okay, I'll take it. Which line of code will produce an error? Dict C equals 1, 2, 3. shouldn't give an issue. For each key in dict, plus equals 1. That shouldn't give any issues. This. Okay, so this will work. This will not work because there is no dict1. Dict1 equals 4 can be added to the dictionary though, but this does not exist. There you go. There is no key that matches 1. This will give a key error. Yep. Yeah. Which line of code will print steak? Alright, so we're looking for order main, and that'll be in not here, not here, because dessert -1, no, that's main is not in quotation marks. So main 1 doesn't, this would be burger. Main 2, 0, looks good to me, I think. Order main, and we want 2. So this would give the entire list. So if there was something else in here, it would print steak, comma, well, including the brackets, I believe. So I think this is what we're looking for. Yes. Alright. Yep, 0 gets the first item from the list. It looks good to me.
Alright, so now that you've learned all about dictionaries, we're going to put all of that knowledge to test and to use by building a blind auction program. So here's the program. When you first run it, it's just going to show you the logo art and maybe a line that tells you what program you're in. And then it's going to ask you for your name. So let's say we have 3 bidders, right? So first go, I go to the computer, I type in my name, I type in my bid, and I hit enter. It asks me if there are any other bidders. I look around the room, I see 2 other colleagues, so I type yes. And now it clears the entire screen so that other people can't see what my bid was. So now I leave the
Well, this is
computer and
interesting.
my colleague comes over. They type in their name
I don't even know how to clear the
and
screen.
also their bid. And again, they look around the room and they see there's one other person who wants to bid. So they hit yes. Again, it clears their bid. And finally, the last person makes their bid. At this point, everybody has bid, so she's going to type no. And it's at this moment when our program is going to work out who has made the highest bid and print out who the winner is and what their bid was. This way, instead of competing with each other on bids, we actually all just give the highest price we're willing to pay, and this is known as quite an efficient way of making a bid. And you see that a lot in, say, the construction industry and government, etc. The important thing in this program is now, one of the most complex parts of actually trying to build this program is how do you clear the screen in between bids? Now, what I want you to do in your version of the code is I simply want you to print out a new line character. So if we print a string, and the string happens to be just the \n, so just a new line, and then we can do this thing where we multiply this string by, say, 20 times or 100 times.
Okay.
And what this means is it's basically going to add 100 new lines. So if I go ahead and print hello, and then I go ahead and have an input, type something. Now, if I run this code, you'll see that hello was printed, and then immediately the next thing I did was to basically clear the screen, and I did that by typing \n 100 times. And this programmatically will scroll to this part, and now I can use this input, and the user won't be able to see the previous part unless they know how to scroll up. In addition, we've also got the starting art of the gavel logo, which you're going to put into the program. And the most important thing of all is that I want you to create a dictionary so that each person's name will be the key and their bid will be the
Okay.
value. And this dictionary is going to contain many of these key value pairs. And at the very end of the program, when everybody's done with bidding, then we're going to loop through that dictionary and figure out who has made the highest bid. If you want, this is a good time to analyze this completed project and see if you can create your own flowchart using something like Draw.io that I've shown you before, or just take a piece of paper and a pen and draw out your flowchart. Now, if you want a hint, then you can head over to the course resources and you'll get taken to the flowchart that I've created for this program. So, spoiler alert, I'm about to show you that flowchart. So if you don't want to see it and you want to create your own, because it's a relatively simple program, then pause the video now and complete the challenge by yourself.
See, that's what I was
Now, for
thinking.
everybody else who's still here, I want to show you this is a flowchart I've created to represent this program. So we start at the beginning. We first show the
Let me
logo
do
from that
a
file
game loop.
art.py, and then we ask for a name input, we ask for their price. Now we're going to add the name and the bid into a dictionary with the name as the key and the bid as the value. Now, once we're done with that, then we get to ask the user for another input and see if there are any other users who want to bid. So if they answer yes, then we're going to clear the screen and we're
Okay.
going to go back to here, ask for another
Yeah,
name,
this
another
doesn't seem
price,
too
and
bad.
so on and so forth. But if they say
Not
no,
too
everybody's
bad at
done with
all.
bidding, then we're going to call some sort of function that we have, which is going to loop through our dictionary that was created here and find the person who had the highest bid value and then declare them as the winner and print out their bid. So it's a relatively simple program, at least compared to other things that you've built so far. So this is the time to pause the video and give it a go.
I'm gonna
So
pause that where it's not covered up. And let's get to it. Oh, okay, there's even to-dos in here anyways. Cool. Alright, so we're gonna first do the fancy import from art. Import. What are we gonna import? Logo. Okay. Let's go ahead and print logo. Well, that looks good to me. Alright, and then we're going to start our ask loop. Ask name equals true. Yeah, simple enough. Ask for name input. While ask name, we're going to get the input. What is your name? And we're going to store that to current player name. Alright. I'm going to ask for the bid price. Current player bid input going to add the name and bid into a dictionary that we need to create. Players and bids equals blank dictionary. Players and bids, current player name equal to current player bid. It at least it is nice and easy to add to a dictionary. Uh, um, we need to ask, are there any remaining players? Then we need to save that input. Are players if not more players, then we're going to move, well, if not more players, then ask name equals false. Alright, then we can break out of that while loop to do the check for finding the highest bid in the dictionary and declare them as the winner, which means we're going to need a for loop for each player in players and bids. Alright, let's create two variables. Highest bid equals, no, because we want that to be an integer. Yeah. And highest bid name equals, alright, if, then we're going to check against players and bids. Player is greater than highest bid highest bid equals players and bids player, right? I think that's correct. So that'll give us the value of the bid for that player. Then we need to highest bid name equals player. Yeah, that's it. And then what is the final output that we want? Let's see
So
if
this
I
is
can
the time to
find
pause the
it.
video. They hit yes. Again, it clears their bid. And finally, the last person makes their bid. at this point, everybody has bid, so she's going to type no. And it's at this moment when our program is.
Okay. But that does remind me that I think, yeah, so, whoopsie daisy. I need to change my logic here. Uh, and we'll do dot lower. So instead of not more players, if more players is equal to no, then what are you giving me? Yeah, they're. Oh, that's right. Neat. There we go. Okay. Um, then we're just printing out. Oops. Print. Do ourselves an F string. The winner is highest bid name with a bid of highest bid. Alright, let's give this a go. What is your name? Blixio. I don't want to go too high. Yes. Okay, we'll go ahead and stop that because I did totally forget to print else print new line times. How much does it want me to do? 20 should be fine. Alright. Lexio 50. Yes. Go with Cora's around here somewhere. Now she's more athletic and less on the smarts, so she's gonna bid really high. Like $200. Yeah. And then there's Nala. You know, she doesn't do much. She doesn't get much income, so she's just gonna go with $10. No, there are no remaining players. Well, all right. What line? Line 20. If players and bids player. Okay, you are correct. We need to typecast that to an integer. I think that should fix our problem. Awesome. That looks good to me.
It's going to work out who has made the highest bid and print out who the winner is and what
Yeah.
their bid was. This way, instead of competing with each other on bids, we actually all just give the highest price. Is a large project is to break it down. So you saw me draw a flowchart, And the next step is I could translate that flowchart into several to-dos in my code. So the first thing I'll probably want to do is to ask the user for some inputs. And the inputs that I need, if you take a look at the demo, is it asks for what is your name, and then what is your bid, and then it's got this $sign in front. And then it asks, are there any other bidders? Type yes or no. So we need a way of capturing these inputs, right? So that could be our to-do number 1. Next, we also need to save the data that the user gives us into a dictionary. And that way we can later loop through the dictionary where we have a list of name and then price, and we'll be able to figure out who is the name that had the highest price. Now, the next thing we might want to do is to figure out whether if the user wants to continue adding new bids. And this might involve some sort of a loop so that we can keep going back to ask the user for input, but of course it will be a different user each time. Now, the final thing to do is to actually go ahead and compare all the different bids and then figure out who has the highest bid in the dictionary. So that's pretty much all there is to it, and let's go ahead and tackle it one by one. So firstly, let's ask the user for some input. So let's save their name into a variable called name, and then we'll use an input to ask them, what is your name? And then we'll add a colon, maybe a space, so they can type their name here. And then once they've typed their name, we'll ask them for a price. So again, it's going to be an input, and we're going to say, what is your bid? And now we're going to add a $sign or whatever currency you work with in front of their bid. But remember that they're going to write a number in here, and inputs are strings. You can see that it's going to give you a string. So in order for us to be able to save it into our dictionary as a number, I'm going to convert it to an integer. Now, of course, if you want bids that have floating points, decimal places, you could also convert this into a float. So now that we've got our number and our name, the next thing to do is to save that data into a dictionary. So if we have a dictionary that we call, let's say we call it bids, and we started out as an empty dictionary, then once we've gotten hold of the data from the user, their name and the price, we can then add to this dictionary of bids. So we can say bids, and then the key is going to be their name, and we can set it to equal the value. So if this is at all unfamiliar, then you might need to go and review the lesson where we learned about dictionaries, how to modify, how to edit, how to add, how to create empty dictionaries. But this is essentially the process to save the data into our dictionary in this format. So
I just
now we
used way
need to
more
ask the user
specific
whether
variable names.
if there are any new bits that need to be added. So we could probably have a variable called should continue, and we could set that to equal an input. And our prompt could be, are there any other bidders? And we can say type yes or no. And then we could add a new line so that they type on the next line. And now we have this variable should continue. So how can we use this variable to go back to the beginning and ask for the new person's name, price, and save it to our bids variable? Well, we would probably need some form of a loop, right? So let's go ahead and use our friend, the while loop. Now, what is the variable that we'll check? Let's say that we had a variable called continue bidding, and we set it to equal true to start off. While continue bidding is true, then we are going to keep asking the user for their name and price. And then we're also going to keep saving their bids into this variable called bids. And then finally, we're also going to ask them what is their choice, whether if there are any more people who are going to enter this auction. So we can now delete all these bits of repeated code. And if you think about this dictionary, we need it to be outside of the while loop so that it accumulates and it doesn't reset to 0 every time the while loop runs. If we had this inside the while loop, then every single time we repeat the loop, we're going to lose all of our previous data. So let's keep it outside. Now, finally, we need to compare the bids in the dictionary once the user is done. So once the user is done, then we would get a no, and if the user was not done, we would get a yes. Now, because this is going to be user input, yes or no, it's usually a good idea to add dot lower onto this so that when we're comparing it using our if statement, we know that it's always going to be lowercase. So if the should continue input is equal to no, well, in that case, we need to compare the bids in our dictionary. Now, since this comparison in our dictionary is kind of like a separate piece of functionality, it's probably a good idea to create a separate function for it. That way we can reuse it, and we can also modularize our code so that it only does that function, and we can keep it outside of the main body of our script. So let's go ahead and create a function which I'll call find highest bidder, and this is going to take an input in the sense of a bidding dictionary. Now, this is just a parameter. We can pass anything we want in here, but we know that what we're going to pass is actually this dictionary of bids. So what we want to do is we want to loop through our dictionary, bidding dictionary, and we're going to look for each bid. So for bid in bidding dictionary would be nice, but as you might remember, when we loop through dictionaries, what happens is we actually loop through each of the keys. So if our dictionary is structured like this and we say for something in bidding dictionary, we're going to be getting hold of each of the names. So let's say for bidder in bidding dictionary, that way we're not confused as to what this value will be, then we can set their bid amount to be equal to the bidding dictionary, and then using the square brackets to tap into that key, the current bidder. And this is how we get hold of the value in a dictionary when we're looping through it. And this is something we covered in previous lessons as well. So now we need to figure out what is the largest number in terms of this bid amount when we loop through the bidding dictionary. Now, there's several ways of doing this, and the most easy to logic through way is to simply set something called a highest bid, and we can set it to equal 0. And then every time we loop through a new bidder and we get hold of their bid amount, we can check to see if the bid amount is greater than the current highest bid. And in that case, then the highest bid is going to be set to the bid amount. So now we can set a winner. So we know who this person is, right? If at this point of the loop, our highest bid is equal to the bid amount, then at the same time, the winner is going to be the person who has that highest amount. So we can also reset the winner to the current bidder. Now, outside of the for loop, so once all of the loop has completed going through each of the entries in our dictionary, we've gone through everybody's bids, then we can go ahead and print the winner. So let's create an F string and say the winner is, and then we can insert this winner variable, and we can say with a bid of, and then our $sign, and the highest bid can go in here as well. So that completes our finding highest bidder function.
I didn't create
And the thing that I said earlier,
the
where I said there's
function,
many
but
ways of doing this,
it's
you can also
almost like
actually just simply use the max
it's
function. Now,
basically the
Python
exact
has
same.
a max function that can figure out what is the maximum value of all of the values in a dictionary. So I've got my Python console open here just to build a separate dictionary. So here I've got a dictionary representing the fruits that are in my house, and I want to know which fruit I have the most of. So what I can do is I can use the max function, pass in my dictionary, fruits, and then after a comma, I could set the key to equal the fruits dot get. And what this line of code is going to do is it's going to look through the values of all of the items in my dictionary, compare them against each other, do a whole bunch of number crunching, and then give me the key that corresponds to the maximum value. Now, if you did a bit of Googling and went onto Stack Overflow because you thought to yourself,
That's a little
surely
above me.
Python must be able to figure this out without me having to work it out, then you are right. But I think given that most people are learning Python from scratch and they don't have any knowledge of other programming languages, this is super mysterious.
Yeah.
And I recommend to actually always try to go from first principles and just simply work it out, because the code is not that complicated. And down the line, this will be a lot easier to figure out than some code you got off the internet. And besides, we're learning at the moment, right? So it's always good to write more code. So we've got our dictionary comparison function. We just need to use it in our while loop. So if should continue is equal to no, that means everybody's done with their bids and this dictionary is now full. So we can now pass that dictionary over to the find highest bidder function. So we can firstly set continue bidding to false, so we exit our loop, and then we set our find highest bidder to work on our dictionary of bids. Now you'll notice that at the moment I have this red underline and I'm not getting any auto suggest for my function down here. And that's because we need to declare this function or create this function before we use it. So if I move it all the way up there, then we now have a
that's why I didn't
want to
do my own function.
So finally, the only other thing we need to do is to check
we're just trying to keep it simple here.
They typed in yes. So if should continue is equal
who knows?
to yes,
maybe tomorrow I'll want to do things the difficult way.
That means they want to go back to the beginning of the loop and enter the next person's name. But remember that what we want to do is to clear the screen when that happens. So if I type yes, I don't want the previous person to see the bid because it's a blind auction, right? So as I mentioned previously, in order to clear the screen, we're simply just going to print out the new line character, so \n, and we can print it out 20 times or 100 times or however many times you want. And then it's going to loop back to the beginning of the while loop, asking the next person. So let's try this out. Let's say that we have one person called Angela who wants to bid $12 for this half-eaten apple. And then we have another bidder who is called John who wants to bid only $3. And finally, we have Kate who only wants to pay $1. So now if we go ahead and say no, there are no more bidders, it tells us that the winner is Angela with a bid of $12. And now all we need to do is to put in the final finishing touch, which is to import and print our logo. So import art, and then we'll go ahead and print art.logo. And that will complete this project. So as always, you can go into the solution.py to view my solution. You can improve the project to your desire, and you can also go back and review some of your code to make sure that everything works as expected. Now, tomorrow will be a new day and we'll be learning some more Python. So get some rest,
Well, I
and
sure
I'll
hope
see you
so.
soon. Hey, congratulations on completing day 9. Now, today I want to share with you a trick that's really useful for keeping your motivations high. And the idea is to make sure that you are accountable by not just yourself, but also somebody else. So find a member of your family, find a friend, find a buddy, and just tell them that you've committed to doing this 100 days of code. And then they'll check up on you every week, asking you, what have you made? What have you learned? And then you can
Well, if
send them the
I
projects you've built,
make
like Handman
videos and
or
I have
Treasure
to make a
Island,
video every
so that
day,
they can
that'll also
share
hold
in your
some
learning and
accountability.
what you've
So,
been building. Now, what this is really important for is that you can't just tell yourself, maybe I'll give myself a day off today. Now you've got somebody who's going to hold you accountable to make sure that you keep showing up and you keep persevering. So
you hold me
give that a
accountable.
go, and I'll see you tomorrow.
I'm talking to you now. Make sure I'm doing this every day. All right. I need you. Tomorrow will be functions with outputs. So we've got functions with inputs already, but functions with outputs. So today was pretty good. I definitely had less hiccups than yesterday, so it's going good so far. See you tomorrow.